Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all of you out there in the world, and welcome in to
good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all of you out there in the world, and welcome.
You have it up somehow.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all of you out there.
Yeah, do you have it up on your YouTube up on your screen?
There it is. I had my YouTube on. I'm a techno nerd. This is so perfect. We're talking about indigos. We're talking about Gen Xers. And I've got too many screens open and they're all talking.
Oh, it has been that kind of day. Oh my gosh. So for those of you who don't know, this show is all about the indigo frequency. And we are here with indigo expert Denise Dryden, and I am Lisa Gunshore, who I think is an experiential indigo expert. And I see that you guys are already joining in the live. Please share how you're feeling today. What a day, Denise. How are you doing?
Well, I've been unsettled all day, and I was reading a post from Pam Youngins on Facebook, and she's like, is anybody feeling an enormous amount of sadness or like low, sort of like you're dragging things through with you? And then she posts that, you know, we are in the middle of an M-class solar flare that started about 7, 8, 9 hours ago, and it has a 25% chance of moving up into an X class. And so, you know, for those of us who've been following solar flares, it means that we're in the middle of something pretty intense, right? So I'm feeling it. How about the rest of you? Anyone feeling like sort of swirls from energy swirls from solar flares or anything else?
Yeah, I want to hear it. Tracy's saying she finally feels better. And hi to everyone. We've got Toronto, California, Huntington Beach. Welcome in, guys. I love hearing where you're from. We want to hear how you're feeling. I have had a really lovely day. I had a great food show earlier, and I had 2 really dear friends come and be with me for the live show at my house. And so we had a lovely visit. And I've had some really difficult conversations I've had to have today. So it's been like this today.
Yep.
And look at this. So we have, hell yes, the energy waves have been insane, y'all. I love that, Carolyn. I love how you just wrote that too.
Well, Liz is having the best day ever. This is great. Yes. Best day of the week. Good. Go, Liz.
Yes, go, Liz.
So what I wanted to do today was start a little bit on like the reason we're doing this indigo frequency show. We're doing it once a month because we want to keep talking about what does it mean to be an indigo, because we know that we're here to, we were seated here to dismantle and clear this stuck old energy, which means that all of this stuff is coming on. We're prepared. We know what to do, right? And this has been going on, a lot of this stuck energy for the last thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, right? We are in the middle of it. And that we're those warriors and galactic masters that know how to do this. We were placed here to do this. And the biggest group of you is going to be between 1977 and 1989. And it sort of dwindles off before that or after that. And those who came before 77, all the way up till probably 54, 55, we're the scouts. So you're going to see these elders, you know, here going like, oh yeah, I was here by myself for a while before the rest of you came. I'm so glad you got here. Right? And then, you know, this frequency piece, Lisa, you know, we talked about this in our last episode in March, you know, the frequency that we hold is intense. What was your takeaway on it?
I think what's interesting to me is how frequency has taken over every aspect of my life. Not just my own frequency, but the frequency that I want around me. And of course, I'm doing my new show, Food Frequency, which is about what we put in the body. And those are just some direct examples. So I think my biggest takeaway from our conversation about frequency is first recognizing frequency. Our frequency, frequencies that resonate, frequencies that have dissonance. like acknowledging that frequency exists and that we're feeling frequency, even today with what you're saying with, you know, these solar flares and this energy and these energy waves, like acknowledging that we're riding a ride, that we're on the boat today, you know, just acknowledging that and understanding the importance of the frequency that we hold. I mean, I think those are the key things, acknowledging it and then understanding what we hold and how to hold it seem like all very important.
I agree. And there's that one last piece too, which is the frequency we hold is embedded in us. It's in our DNA. It is the light codes that we hold, and it is not something we may be even conscious of. So we're exuding this frequency of truth wherever we go, and things are sort of falling down and dismantling or reacting to us at all times. So this frequency is interacting now with higher, different frequencies. And so one of the reasons that we did frequency first, which is last month, if you didn't watch that, please go back and watch that, because that was a big one. Is that when we hold this frequency, it has an impact on our bodies. It has to. And so that's where Lisa and I connected, because she's like the expert on the body. What's going on with the body? And I just go like, I got this symptom, and I got a hip, and I've got a jaw, and I've got spinning, and I've got sleepless nights. But Lisa is the one who can really drive this in for us. So when we have a unique genetic makeup, when we have light codes in our system, we're going to interact with a 3D differently than most human beings. So that makes Indigo a little susceptible and a little pre-programmed for certain physical issues. What do you think is the top one that you come across the most?
The top physical issue?
Yeah, or the top thing that kind of comes to mind, like, wow, I think I'm really dealing with Indigo issues at this point.
Well, so the top one is, I would say, is toxic burden. And that goes hand in hand with weight, to be honest. And let me even, I'm seeing images while we're talking. So I'm like, they're showing me what they want me to say. So I'm like, oh, I see. So it's not just about being overweight. It's about being overweight in an unexplained way. And experiencing toxicity in a peculiar, unexplained way. And what's coming through me right now, Denise, while I'm saying this too, is about the programs that have been created and the technology created to control the gifts of the Indigo. And those have been these peculiar, mysterious things that it's not just a simple diagnosis. It's a peculiar, I have this strange symptom. My ears ring when I'm standing underneath power lines, you know, or I've gained this weight and there's something happening with my endocrine system, which I know we're going to get in today. You know, my third eye is cloudy when I used to have all these visions, you know. That's what makes it Indigo. What makes it Indigo is your gifts are impacted by external forces, which I think is the warfare we're experiencing, really. And that's what's coming through me right now. It's like, you know, there's a very specific biological warfare occurring to affect our frequency. And that's what makes our symptoms unique, because we have a genetic makeup that's unique, which we're going to get into today. And we have this unique sensitivity to certain kinds of toxic burdens like EMFs, you know, glyphosate, these things. And it's prevalent in the Generation X. I mean, glyphosate was made legal in 1973. Before that, your gut did not have Roundup in it. After that, it did. So it's all directly linked.
It is. And I was pondering this idea that as early as the mid 1950s, they started dental plans where they were putting deep metal fillings in, you know, suspected children to shut down any of the meridians, any of the frequency ability. They decided to put fluoride in the water, and fluoride, mandate fluoride treatments twice a year in the dental programs, right? So it's just going to one aspect, you're thinking, oh man, because when we put fluoride in our system, or when we have, when we're exposed to aluminum, it calcifies our third eye. That is the gift of the indigo. So if you go back to episode 2, we talked about the history of how it was like, we're going to see these powerful beings in, and then there was this movement between the mid 50s, 60s, 70s, early 70s, 80s, 90s to put toxicity into the world of this population and shut it down, because we are going to accomplish this frequency boost.
Even though what's interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a fun fact to throw in with our conversation, because my husband was just telling me last night he's listening to this new show that's not new. It's been on for like 10 years, but he's taking in the information. And one of the pieces of information is the very calculated attack on the right brain, and wanting to shut down the right brain and create this left-brained control group. And it dawned on me, so I'm left-handed. And when I was in 2nd grade, my teacher told me I shouldn't write with my left hand. That was wrong. I was supposed to write with my right hand. And luckily I have hippie parents who went to bat for me and said she can write with whatever hand she wants to. I'm left dominant. That's it. However, it kind of kicked in last night. Oh, we're trying to shut down that right brain, that creative brain. Of course, they tried to change everyone from being left-handed. Think of how many people were schooled to write with their right hand for a long time, right before they really made it acceptable and okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of it too, because left dominant means we're right brain dominant, which goes back to our intuitive gifts. It goes back to what the indigo frequency is all about.
Well, when I think of the ADD, ADHD, the disciplinary issues that preceded that in the education system, what it's like to be a creative, experiential, hands-on inventor or creator in a classroom that has us sit 6 to 8 hours a day in desks, raising our hands, being quiet until we're called on. These are things that thank goodness every decade it opens up and the schools become a little bit more free, even though they are still an environment that is all about conditioning, a certain performance within the student. So we've already gone through that too, but the crunch of not knowing how to sit still, not knowing how to stop my mind from wandering, not knowing how to tell the teacher I'm seeing the historical stories or the facts moving around in my head and seeing more than what she wants to talk about or he wants to talk about, and being singled out for being a troublemaker in school because I am receiving and participating in information that is aligned with truth, that is not aligned with the environment. And so that, there were so many days where I didn't want to go to school, where I had stomach aches, headaches, earaches. I ended up hospitalized for 6 months with pneumonia, in 2nd grade. So these are the symptoms. I want to pick up over here that Meg with the animal intuitive is talking about a PEM, what is it? The PEMF bed that she is on.
Yeah.
And that how that sort of helps her ground or helps her with some of these symptoms, right?
Yeah.
And my favorite things there. No.
Go ahead.
Just knowing that there are some that we're going to find in the comments, and we're going to discover that there are things we can do to alleviate some of these stressors, some of these symptoms, and some of the things. And we'll go through that at the end as well. I just wanted to grab that because sometimes when it moves up, I forget.
Well, yeah. And Tracy says too, it can make you feel crazy because it isn't easily explained. It is like a gaslighting. It's a gaslighting. And I remember being handed Xanax, which is in my book. I wrote it in my book and said I was handed Xanax and said, you're a hypochondriac, when I actually had parasites attacking 3 major organs in my body. So that gaslighting of we're going to make you think you're crazy and drug you and numb you further as your body shuts down to keep you from living your dharma here as an indigo.
Yeah. And that's the biggest issue is that it was targeted for the glandular system of our bodies. It was targeted to shut down our receptivity. And yet at the same time, we hold a frequency. So our body is still going to promote that frequency at the cost of our physical health. So one of the things that I noticed is that Chiron, I just did a presentation on, been talking Chiron for 2 full days now. Indigos have a lot of nervous, energy, right? And when our nervous system is impacted, Chiron rules the nervous system and these wounds and all of these things are going on. So our nervous system is under attack and there's ways to track that and find out. And then that nervous system goes into our digestion, which we've seen with high levels of cortisol, lots of stomach, large intestine, small intestine, leaky gut, lack of vitamin and mineral absorptions, food allergies, shutdown. And part of this is the glyphosate, part of this is the nervous system, part of this is there anything else that I'm as I'm putting these pieces together between how our nervous system is overreacting and how we have toxic chemicals and issues that have been introduced to us? Is there anything else that we want to put right in there as we're building this structure?
Yeah, I think the childhood trauma. I think, as you've talked about, and we talked about it in the very first show, what do indigos do? We tend to incarnate into these situations or family units that have some kind of trauma. So we build a trauma response, and then you pile on all of these other things, and suddenly we're all in therapy. We're not holding our frequency.
Well, thank goodness we're in therapy, because the generations before us didn't do that. They just held on or suffered or died early, or we're shut down and numb or self-medicating all the time. So thank goodness we're talking about it and we're flushing this out of our system. We're doing nutrition, we're doing supplements, we're working with how to heal our bodies, and we're having shows like this where we're talking about, hey, there's something bigger going on.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait to get woo-woo. Hi, Denise. Live life spiritual direction. Her question is, what do you think of stevia? I've heard mixed things. This is just another fluoride. So this is my opinion, right? Yes. You can do what you wish with it, but as an Ayurveda practitioner, we only put natural whole foods in our body. So I do not use stevia. It is not a natural whole food. It is a processed food, in my opinion. So I would much rather use a natural sweetener rather than something that has been processed and packaged. So that's my opinion. What's your opinion, Denise? What do you think of stevia?
I haven't researched it. I don't like the taste. It never worked for me, so I didn't like it. The fact that it came on the market so big, so fast, and everybody was loving it was like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. So when I have a tendency to be suspicious when the general public jumps on something really quickly. That tells me I need to find out what else there is. The other thing to pay attention to is that some of the big grocery stores, even the big box stores, even Costco, their suppliers are not necessarily providing us with clean, pure, natural supplements or vitamins. That some of those have ingredients that are very subtle that have been still included to shut down our system. So I agree with you that when we go to the most basic, natural, from scratch basis, that's how I've been healing my body for the last 12 years.
And we'll get into it further, but that's kind of what an indigo has to do. And I love here what Liz is saying. She's saying, oops, I clicked it. Yeah, she's actually grown stevia and used the leaf. So there you go. That's the natural form. That's what I would do. Processed form, no. And thank you guys for all these comments. Keep them coming. And yeah, I mean, I think the real thing here is to be as natural as possible. And I have something to say about that when we get into Atlantis. We're going to talk a little bit about Atlantis and Lemuria today. And, we'll talk a little bit more about those natural substances and why they're really important whenever we feel like we talk about them.
I did something. Susie Miller is one of the influencers I work with. She runs a call every Monday. That's just sort of like a, hey, let me bring in what I'm getting and let's do some cleaning and some processing. And there's usually 20 to 50 of us on the phone, and she guides us through. And she went through the pineal gland, and we decalcified it. And she kept seeing it as having little sharp, like shards of glass that were broken. And so we went through and smoothed out the calcification and opened up the pineal gland. Then she did something that I hadn't heard before, which is to bring a direct line down from the pineal gland into the thyroid. That when the thyroid and the pineal gland are disconnected, they don't, because the thyroid is the hormonal and chemical balancer for the body. It has to have the lens of the pineal gland working so that we can stabilize. If this is calcified or shut down, or the connection between the two is not open, and so maybe, I don't know that doesn't feel like we're gonna do processes during our bit, right? However, when you're off screen today or tonight or over the next week, when you're concentrating on your pineal gland, make sure that you're bringing that into the thyroid, because that's how we're going to recalibrate and balance. And so these two glands have been impacted and they've been separated. And so what we want to do is just know that there's a connection there.
Well, and what's in between those two glands? The nose and the olfactory. And what have we been poking?
Well, of course. And and what is the oxal? Oh shoot. The
occipital. Is that right?
Occipital, yeah. And so that was the connection too. And I just, was thinking, I bypassed that one and just went, I just need these two to be as connected as possible. Absolutely as connected as possible.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Did you still want to ground? Should we ground or should we just go?
We might need to, because I've noticed that we are just having so much, we're kind of jumping and grabbing at things. And what I noticed is that what's been helping me is to maybe just look at the screen for a minute. And if you're sitting there, put your feet on the ground if they're on the ground. If not, make sure that the lower part of your torso, your root chakra, is just, you can just take it and pull it down into the earth and sink it as, deep. I like to take it to the center of the earth and take it and run cords, vines down to the center of the earth and really anchor it in there. And then bring it up to the sacral and bring the sacral down into the root chakra. And then the piece that changed everything for me this week was to take the solar plexus and even put my hand, right below your breastbone, or, above your belly button, and just take those solar plexus and breathe into them, and then sink them into the sacral, sink them into the root, and sink them into Gaia, into earth. And so what we're doing is we're breathing into the ground rather than putting the lower half of our body into the ground and then breathing up. We're actually breathing down and allowing ourselves to sink in with each breath. And I'm hoping that helps us stay in this conversation, because there's so much to cover. And if we're jumping around, maybe this grounding will help us. What does it feel like? Does it help? Feedback, anyone?
I feel better. Yeah. How is everybody feeling out there? I feel very activated. So I feel grounded, and I'm very excited to talk about so many things.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to let you just take off with this one, because when it comes to the physical issues, when you've been doing the research much more than I have, I'm looking at the sort of outer pieces of what am I experiencing, and you are going right after the genetics, right after the Ayurvedic balancing everything. So Lisa, go for it.
Oh, thank you. We're going to get woo-woo right out of the gate. So I want to share the definition of the type 2 indigo from the Ascension Glossary, and we're going to get into Atlantis a little bit, so I hope you guys are ready. So the actual definition in the Ascension Glossary, indigo 2, so there's 3 types. This is one type, okay? It's number 2. 2s are specifically working to regenerate and activate the human DNA templates to its highest potential. This will be the group of healers, energy transmitters, working directly in the healing arts in some way. Each one has a specific gift of healing tools and light codes to assist humans in healing distortions embedded in the physical and energetic bodies. These distortions have been created and inherited from the karmic patterning resulting from all the incarnating evolutionary cycles. Now, there's so much I could talk about with that. I am absolutely a type 2. And I'd like us to just kind of go into this Atlantean Lemurian energy. And is it a story? Is it an archetype? Is it real? Did it happen? Is it happening now? Is it an alternate dimension? We don't know. And we're just going to let that be for right now. I think we all have our own opinions. But I want you to think about it this way. I was raised Catholic, and I told my priest, Father Lennox, I did not know that I believed in the Bible. And he told me, Lisa, he goes, the Bible is just a book of stories to teach lessons. And that was really beautiful, by the way. I had a very amazing priest and love that religion, even though I'm Buddhist now. And so here's what I can tell you. I believe that about the stories of Atlantis and Lemuria. Did they exist? I'm certain they did and do now. And it's a lesson. And this is what I want to share with you. So in Atlantis, as you know, the Atlantean race had all sorts of genetic engineering going on, all sorts of bringing animals and humans, and they were breeding all sorts of different things and messing all around with genetics. And the Lemurian people, who some say came before, some say happened at the same time, the Lemurians were these kind of, I would relate them to crystals. They're very like, they were drinking liquid light and living off vegetation and these like lovely light beings. Yeah. And you can often in this time, I mean, can't you, Denise? It's automatic if somebody's Atlantean or Lemurian, right? I always think those really beautiful, small, vegan yogi girls, like they're so Lemurian with their crystal energy and their singing bowls, and they're these teeny tiny yogis, and you're like, oh, you're so sweet, and they're so gentle, they'll talk gentle, right? And then us that are indigos are most indigos I think are very Atlantean, where we're like, blah, we're loud, and we usually are not small people, and we often have these issues like I talked about with indigo. We have these genetic issues, and we have health issues, and we have all these challenges. We could never be vegan. Like, it's just not even possible. Well, so in the story of Atlantis and Lemuria, and I didn't even know I was going to share this, but it really came up today, so I'm just going to share it. So here's Atlantis and Lemuria. Lemuria wanting things to stay natural and pure and in this liquid light crystal form. They have liquid crystals, right? And then here's Atlantis, who loves technology and wants to understand genetics and is interested in healing disease in a different way. Whatever happened here, there was some kind of collision, right? Conflict, collision, things happened, and poof, there's the story, right? Atlantis, whatever happened to it, is it coming back? I think so. I don't think Edgar Casey's wrong. I think we're going to see it come to the surface. But anyway, the whole point of that is now we're in indigo. I've incarnated. I have a frequency. I have a focus. And I have genetic mutations. And one of the things that I really see I think it's directly related to indigo, is the MTHFR mutation. And for those of you who don't know about it, I would look up Dirty Genes, Genes, by Dr. Ben Lynch. He talks about all of that. And I think it's pretty funny because MTHFR kind of looks like motherfucker, and we kind of are motherfuckers. And so this genetic mutation causes dysfunction with our ability to methylate toxins. That's what it does. So what happens is we build up toxicity much more quickly than other people. We carry weight. We have trouble with our endocrine system, if this sounds familiar. And so we have these issues with our health. And usually they're unexplained because the process of methylation, the chart looks like this very complicated machinery. It's this very complicated technology. And one little thing out of whack causes other things to be out of whack, and everyone is uniquely different. So for me, I'm compound heterozygous MTHFR. It means that I only make one part of two of the systems that we have. Some people don't make anything. And if you don't have any, if you're homozygous in both of these, you probably are autistic or have MS or have some of these other bigger issues. So not being able to methylate toxins is a problem. Isn't this interesting? Because in Atlantis, weren't we all priests and priestesses engineering genetics? So we played around with some stuff that now we've come in to heal. That's my belief. Mm-hmm. So here's what did with me today, Denise. I actually got this download today, and I don't even remember when, but it came through. We now are being invited as indigos to heal and work with the genetic mutations through the Lemurian practices of natural and organic whole foods. We are literally the embodiment of Atlantis and Lemuria in the body now, bringing it into the earth and bringing the teachings of both of these societies forward for the healing of humanity. And I really believe this is true. I believe that any of us who relate to indigo 2s, any of us who have dealt with the endocrine system, the thyroid issues, we're going to talk about that, right, Denise? Thyroid and tonsils and adrenals and, oh my God, the list goes on and on. But all of these things that we're managing through must be healed through these natural means, which is what led me to Ayurveda and to the work that I do with clients now, because Ayurveda is all about natural, whole, organic foods, and every blueprint is uniquely different. And I believe that this healing, the conflict of the story of Atlantis and Lemuria is actually, it can be a conflict inside of us and come out as dis-ease, or we can bring healing to it and peace to that conflict and bring the peaceful communities in Atlantis and Lemuria and all of the ancient teachings forward in our modern day society.
I think you put your finger right on it. I've often understood that they were cultures that lived simultaneous. They were cultures that went one and the other, that they are cultures that hold the masculine extreme energy, the feminine extreme energy. What I noticed about Lemuria is that it is a effervescent, non-defined. And so it moves with and partners with energy. And so that is something that we have to learn how to do, which is acknowledge that there are parts of us that read and feed and feel on energy all the time. And if we come from a very structured family system or a very structured work life or a very, a need for for rigid, those edges, they break down in our body. That's where the toxicity hits us. And so when I'm looking at aging parents or aging friends' parents who, I know their mothers or fathers were control freaks. They were the ones who were like always holding on. Now they're in this stage where all of those parts of their ability to control their mind, their body functions, their nervous system are just releasing into stages, very quickly advanced stages of disease. And I think that's interesting. We've had some comments going over here that I want to pick up on so we don't lose those. Tara with Mother's Intuition was wondering where the Ascension Glossary comes from, and it was ascensionglossary.com. It's a web. It is both Lisa and her husband and I, it's one of those things where you read the definition and each word is highlighted, that you click on that, it goes into another definition, then it goes into another definition, and you could be in there for days. But just type in indigo. And there are 3 types of indigos, Tara. What else do we have down here? Cortisol levels. Yeah, we're going to talk about that with Meg, the animal intuitive. So, yeah. So it makes sense that we are learning how to embody two completely different genetic and purpose systems, and our job is to partner those and to also use those on this purpose to go in and mind, to go in and access these DNA components where the memories are kept. But we've got to sort of get through all of the family lineage, all of the dark histories that have come in with each of these families as we're going through the layers. So we as Indigos placed into these systems because that's the work we're here to do, is to heal the blood lineages. Now, Michael Sala put up, we are a combination of 24 different ancient civilizations from around the galaxy in our DNA. And when certain people, those of us with a genetic composition, get close to some of these old arcs, some of these extraterrestrial sites, they move, they awaken, they respond, they pulse. So it tells us that there's something in that DNA that we are here to go after. And if we are ignoring it, then we are suffering in our body. Some of those, what do I want to say? There will be suffering, or there has been suffering, as you start to sort of go through the deep darkness of all of the layers of digestion or nutrition or conditioning or toxicity that we've encountered over multiple generations and hundreds and thousands of years. So, you put your finger right on it, Lisa. So
well, you went right where I was going to go too with the different genetic lines we have inside of us, because much like we have this conflict and partnership with Atlantis and Lemuria, we also have conflict and partnership with all of these different bloodlines. And when we talk about things like the injections, those are the reactions to those, from what I've channeled, are directly related to us wanting to reject certain bloodlines from our system, and it's creating distortion. And even the Ascension Glossary talks about what indigos are doing is healing. The indigo type 2s are healing distortion in the DNA. And so I think it's really important to remember that this is also a diplomatic mission. And as an indigo, we are diplomats who are asking our own bodies to integrate conflicting systems, conflicting beliefs, conflicting DNA, to become in partnership, because that is the microcosm of the macrocosm we're asking to do on the planet Earth right now, is to accept, love, and generate compassion for all of the different species that exist, whether we believe they exist or not. It's opening yourself up to those possibilities. That is what's going to create a further ripple of awakening across the planet. And we start with our own body.
Mm-hmm. And it takes courage to start with our own body, especially when we're looking at allopathic medicine, where there's pharmaceuticals, whether it's food allergies. I do have this experience of having a partner I was with for a while. It was looking like diabetic. You need to go to this diabetes conference and learn how to use, what this is about. And when I walked in the door, it was all about different versions of sugar-free desserts you could make that were exactly like the ones you wanted, but with chemicals and pumps and this and that. And I was like, no, you don't, this is the wrong audience for me, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at, if that's not working, where do I need to go on the natural, nurturing my body back into shape, or his body, my partner's body, and work with, how did we get here and how do we reverse this energetically, nutritionally, spiritually, and start to withdraw some of those symptoms out of the body, and knowing that that's possible, and that there are healers now, especially this cranial sacral world where we can go in and revamp all of the programming, all of the directives that the body has, and release some structures and keep going deeper into the lineage lines, into the physical lines, and releasing pain, releasing disease from the body. This is what we're capable of doing.
Well, and isn't it interesting that as Indigos, we talked about it in the first show about the need to speak our truth and how we're holding the blue ray of truth. Mm-hmm. And isn't it interesting that what I've noticed with the toxic burden and MTHFR and these health challenges is we have to become our own health advocate. And we often are battling against all sorts of systems telling us that we're wrong, and telling us that we are crazy, and telling us that we're making a mistake choosing a holistic route rather than, an allopathic or a synthetic route. And I think it's really interesting that it's like the biggest battle I've had in my life is standing up to a medical professional and saying, I think you're wrong, and I'm going to go find out what's really going on with me. And that's what led me on my entire journey. I mean, really, like that was what led me to go out and find what was wrong and solve the mystery. And that is having to stand in your truth when everybody else is like, what are you even doing?
Well, it may be model. And it isn't about making people wrong. I'm not saying it's like, how do we mentally get over that? You're wrong, I'm going to do something different. Because that's what all of us do. Is like, no, stop telling me what's wrong with me, what I can't, what I have to do. And then how do I go, thank you very much, and I'm going to go find out something different. And then I'm going to start talking about it everywhere I go, and I'm going to live it. So people go, wow, what happened? You look better than you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It was like, your weight's down, your eyes are clear, you're moving, your joints are working. Well, this is what I'm doing. And this is where I had to sort of separate from and not come into any judgment about that separation, but more just start going on our own little path and saying, who wants to follow? This is really good. I've got my finger on something. And that's why we do these shows. That's why you have your own, systems of shows and education classes. And that's why I'm out there hammering things away weekly on YouTube, which is, this is what I'm discovering. This is what you might want to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is the journey of the indigo. I mean, the indigo is invited to, stand up for ourselves, become our own advocate in toxic relationships, in our health and wellness, in our self-care, and often have to find a way. Usually the path is leading you to deactivate the trauma response in your nervous system. That seems to be for indigos. It's the minute we can release the trauma responses is the minute we can step out of these patterns and we can really step into our power and actually step into why we're here and let go of what is trying to, distract us from our path.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I agree. And it's not an easy path, especially when we have marriages or we have jobs, when we have children, is to be able to individuate and say, hey, I have a system that needs to be taken care of. And then what we're going to talk about as we go forward into 5th, 6th, 7th episode is what it's like when we also have the responsibility of recognizing the indigo in a child and helping them determine how to have that separation from distruth or untruths into truth without imposing our doing the same thing. We can't condition other people with what we need. All we can do is explore it ourselves and then model it. So we'll go through that down the road. Trust us. We're sort of building a platform here, one show at a time, of what else is coming up for the indigo.
Yeah. Where do we go from here?
What questions do you have? Any questions over here? Katie says this is a rich conversation. Yeah, it's deep. It's, we're getting down to the fact that we are supporting ourselves on a cellular level and an energetic level, and how the cellular and energetic levels interact with each other, and we can move and transform and shift things in our physical body and in our presence and in our frequency, and even become more powerful than we are by design. We are masters. We are specialists from other parts of the galaxy here in human form.
Yeah. And I think what's really powerful for all of us to know is, like, when I go through a genome analysis and you look at what's, not working right, and you start to supplement or shift, because it's not just supplements, pills, a lot of it is food, and a lot of it is actually very simple things like meditation. If your neurotransmitters burn out quickly, the solution isn't to go take dopamine. That solution doesn't even really exist. The solution is to meditate, to be quiet, to slow down, to shut off the noise, to turn your phone off. So I think, what's powerful is we all have the ability to heal ourselves. I think we've heard that from Louise Hay for 50 years. But it's the embodiment of that belief and understanding that we do have these issues with our genetics. And most people have many, and just don't know it. And when you start to figure out, oh, my genetics are not actually my fate. I can actually live a different life. I can have a different physical experience. I can break free of my lineage and the genetics that have been given to me. That isn't just a linear experience. My ability to cure my own Hashimoto's and to heal so many things that have been wrong with my body that weren't functioning correctly, and to be able to have energy and do all the things that I do, that came from actually understanding the lineage itself, the ancestry itself, my soul karma itself, and bringing that to the surface. That's the work of the genome. And that's the work, I believe, of this Indigo type 2 definition that I so resonate with, which is the distortion isn't just I have MTHFR and I need to eat foods with folate. Like, that's the linear part. But the nonlinear part is I came here to learn self-care. And through that, I came into a lineage that had an issue in which in order to live a full life and do what I came here to do, I choose to take care of myself. And so we have these genetic codes, this technology that's teaching us how to take care of ourselves. And that same technology is actually put in place so that we as an Indigo can do the work we came here to do. That does both.
Well, let's loop around and go to the idea that we started this conversation with. The idea that today, April 20th, there's a huge solar flare happening, right? And what if, as this solar flare comes in and it's imparting vast amounts of light and energy onto our earth, that it isn't also awakening, sort of stirring some of these internal codes that are like, hey, you need less sleep than you thought you did. You need your electronics, they make your body hurt when you're around them, put them down. Drink more water, look at your absorption level, increase your magnesium, increase your vitamin B, B12s. What else are some of the things that they're saying? Look at how to calm your nervous system down when this is present. These are all symptoms that are coming in with the solar flares that are also directly related to the symptoms that we get to face on an hourly, daily basis in our Indigo bodies. And we're helping both of them moving along. So I'm noticing, as I'm paying more attention to my body, I have more self-knowledge of where I'm getting off track or where I'm restless, like when the candida. I've been working on candida and parasites and watching when those are roaring. It also happens to be when the flares are roaring. It also happens to be, what do I do with my body when that happens? it's my mind. And so when we started, I sunk us, I brought us from the grounding, from the root chakra, the sacral, and the solar plexus, and bringing it all down, and realizing that from that position, I can go, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm having a comparison or a judgment or a reaction to, man, I don't like the way this is happening right now. And I just want to go back to my old pattern. I want to eat what I want to eat. I want to do what I want to do. And you're like, no, I'm doing self-care differently. So there's that internal battle constantly that's going on, as well as the genetics and the environmental. So when we understand that those are all working simultaneously together, then the skill sets they start with self-care, they start with self-awareness, and then they start with rebalancing the cellular system in the body so that it starts to function stronger.
Yeah. And that goes back to the last show, which is the frequency that we hold is, as we go through this healing process, our frequency starts to come online. Mm-hmm. And that is the difference. If you look at my before picture, when I weighed 250 pounds, you could see the frequency and how low it was. And it was very masculine, and it was very closed and compressed. Mm-hmm. And when you look at a picture of me now, or you see me here on the screen, it's a very feminine, it's a completely different frequency. And so I think that's what's important to understand is, if our job is to hold this frequency, then we want to do the work on ourselves to hold the frequency. And I'm seeing all these great questions.
I'm looking at these statements and going like, wow, point on. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have part 2, because it's almost an hour already, if you can even believe it. So Mother's Intuition is saying, can you speak more on when we're actively trying to heal ourselves? That massive things end up interrupting: injuries, accidents, events, solar flares. And then, she says the constant derailment is debilitating. To me, that's a tricky one, because there could be a collective reason. There mm-hmm. could be a program or a controller reason for you personally, or it could be external events manifesting as your own version of self-sabotage. So I think it could be any of the things. I think it's kind of an individual answer. And I would look at kind of those components and see what resonates with you. What do you think, Denise, about that?
Well, I think it's any and all. Noticing that as we get closer to this repetitive awakening, ascension symptoms, frequency building, the human expansion, there seems to be more external fear factors going up, whether it's food and gas prices, whether it's war, whether it's another lockdown, whether it's this, whether it's that. These things are just coming in and making it. And I agree with Tara that it can be very debilitating to have to juggle all of that, and a family, and a culture, and in a world that is feeling under attack. And that makes sense to me. The piece that I'm glad that you talked about, the difference between you at 250 pounds and you now, and it's that we still have that same frequency in us. It's just that it gets dulled, and it's very hard for us to bounce off of each other or find each other, because it's so caught within the density of layers of thoughts and conditioned and weight and everything else. When we start to move through that, it's almost like our tribe increases exponentially. We start to react and find people, and then we feel less alone. So that frequency does expand. Carolyn talks here about that food can taste different, that our vessels digest things and we're behaving differently. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because we're changing. What used to satiate us, what we used to use to placate or to normalize, may not be efficient anymore. Mm-hmm. The sheer amount of water that I have to drink with minerals in it in order to, all I do is walk around all day feeling thirsty, and that is a new feeling for me, because I'm not a water drinker. Yeah.
No, well, and I feel too what Carolyn's bringing up. So I've had kind of two different experiences with frequency or vibration changes for myself. When I was going through like a cleanse or this healing phase where I was cleaning a bunch of stuff out of my body, I found that as I did that and my frequency changed, what I craved and how my body worked was different. I've also been through other experiences where I've had a frequency shift that was abrupt. So for example, being in the presence of the Dalai Lama was one of them, a near-death experience. Sometimes it can be one of these solar flares, right? We're going through it right now. And when there's an abrupt frequency change, the frequency invites us to change. So sometimes it's your changing that's creating these differences. And sometimes it's the frequency has changed abruptly. And now you're suddenly feeling different. So I think the important thing is whatever you're feeling is to go with your intuition. I love what Liz says about using a pendulum. I've done that for years, penduluming food at the grocery store and everything. It was acceptable in Boulder. I don't know about Boulder, it was okay to pendulum food.
I don't wear my pendulum. I just sort of keep it inside my chest. Sometimes I wear a shawl and I keep my hands underneath. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And I go through
in Boulder, Colorado, you can pendulum everything out in the open, but I don't know about anywhere else. but yeah, I mean, so I think you can have both, Carolyn. Like, I think you can have the frequency can also invite you to change where you're like, wow, I wasn't actively changing, but something has changed. And the important thing is to pay attention to it for sure.
I think there's one last point. I know we want to wind this down, but the part of the changes that are going to happen or have been happening, they can be cellular, they can be in our tastes and our differences. They might actually move us away from some people for a bit, or even, like I'm noticing how many friends I have that are 45 to 65 that are just alone. That we're in that spot where we're looking around like, okay, I've been taking care of myself for a decade now, and my frequency is getting stronger and stronger, and I'm learning how to do life by myself. And sometimes I involve other people. My friend circle's getting smaller. My family sort of has its distance. And then it steps in, and I notice that it is impacting my relationships as well. And I want to make sure that we don't ignore that part, because when we change frequency on everything. Or when we expand our frequency, or move from a life we created around other dense human beings into a bright, shining light, sometimes they just don't want to be around us when we're that bright and shiny. It requires too much work.
I totally agree. And I think if you're down, and everybody here, I can tell the energy of the audience, like, we didn't even get to the endocrine system, really. We didn't even, not in depth, we didn't get into the solutions to really start to heal. So I think we go next month even deeper. I mean, what do you think?
I think that it would make sense to do more genetic really diving, because I want to know more about the MTHFR, how to test for it, what markers to look for. I want to know what else I might need to address that I'm not thinking of right now, because I don't have a background in genetic understanding. I've been really good at adapting nutrition to help with my food allergies, but I'm sort of in the dark on that. So I think it would be another good area for us to put our experiment, or our attention and experiment with what's working with the audience too. And, Tara says, oh yes, please.
Let's do it. I would love it. I'll even get some visual aids for us so we can better understand it, because I think it's fascinating, and it's really, really important, because how important is our immune system after the last 2 years? And if you don't understand where the engine is broken, the whole thing can fall apart, just like a car. So it's really important, and it's technology. And so I think it's really important to understand this technology and to work with it. So I think we do that for sure. And I would love to hear, so if you're watching now, if you watch the replay, if you're on our social, I don't care where you post it and what comments on what account or whatever, we don't care. But what I want to know is, I would really like to know, because I'd like to put together a little test group. So I'd really like to know how many of you are experiencing mysterious illnesses, know you have MTHFR, or maybe you've just been challenged with autoimmune or thyroid issues. I'd be curious how many of you guys relate as an indigo and also with these issues, because I'd really like to put together some more data around this and really dig into this a little deeper, and also what you'd like to know about it. Because I do think there's not very much information, but I'm seeing other indigos connecting the dots in their blogs and things, but nobody's really talking about it. So we're talking about it. And I would like to hear from you, kind of, if you're feeling this vibe. I'd like to know more, and I'd like to know your story. I'd like to know what you're struggling with. That'll help us to put together what we really want to talk about next month too.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And Liz asked for books and how to do some research ahead of time. And I guess the best tool we have is curiosity, which is, type in MTHFR, type in, the propensity of thyroid issues and how far it goes into the body and what the short-term and long-term are. And I try to get away from the sponsored articles and start getting down into the alternatives and start to build that. This is how I build my astrology readings. This is how I build my coaching practices. I ask questions, and then I keep asking for what else is there out there that I can deal with. So, I think it's great. Put your questions in the comments. If we have any references or materials, Lisa, you sent me a couple of really good articles on the HFR. Maybe we could pop those in the bottom and just get things going.
Yeah, I definitely will. And I'm seeing SIBO here too, for sure. We can talk about SIBO. That's all part of this generation coming in with glyphosate for sure. And don't forget that my biotransformation labs is all on YouTube for you guys. The last 3 classes, it was toxic burden, candida, parasites, and this Saturday we're doing mold, and it's all free.
It's fantastic. I've been there for each one, and I have pages of notes, and I'm like, oh no. And my coffee shop is now, no matter how much I beg, I can't have honey or oat milk in any of my drinks. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we're doing candida now.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I'm just seeing lots of great comments here, you guys. So yeah, we're going to keep this going. This is my passion. This is not only my passion, but been my life experience. I mean, this is really, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's passion. We were going to talk about the book and we forgot. So,
oh, jeez.
So we'll do something next month with it too. But this, the first 3 episodes of this is all in the Indigo assignment book that I just finished writing, and it comes out May 1st. Yay! So I will put a link to that in this as well. A picture and a link to how to find more about the Indigo assignment, because it's six parts on all of these different things, and definitely does not go into the genetics as deep as Lisa is, which I'm so grateful for today. Thank you.
Oh, God. Well, your book. So let's do this. I'm putting on the spot live, but let's try to get on Instagram live this weekend, maybe, if we have space, and talk about your book.
I would love that.
So you guys come join us over on Instagram this weekend. I'll send out an email and we'll post about it, but let's have a whole separate conversation about your book too. Because this is like our guide, you guys. It's the Indigo guide. I'm so excited. And I also want to take a few minutes. We are so over on time. We really need to end. But Denise, do you want to take just a minute to share with people like how you're working with people right now? Because I know even for me, you're such a guide, especially with the Indigo piece. And there's so much you have to offer, and you're doing some really cool things. And I think it's really important for you to share with everybody what you're working on right now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, the book has taken up so much time that I've been remiss in building information about the direction of my coaching. Primarily, I'm looking at integrational coaching, which is what happens when we have to deepen our self-knowledge, or we have to build adaptability and stability tools for what do we do when our energy system, when our nervous system is rocked. And then the third, which is exploring these energetic seedings and how they impact us, whether we are one, or we're in a partnership with one, or we're birthing children that are crystals or rainbows or diamonds. And so I've been exploring this on an individual and a familial level for years. I'm having a blast doing one-on-one work with someone who wants to do that deep dive in and find out what areas are working and what areas are not. And, you know, I throw in all the esoteric stuff while we're doing it. So you can get a hold of me on DeniseDryden.com, and it'll be down in the links. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah. You're welcome. And I want to share too, my exciting news is I have just put up my brand new point of conception package up on my site, BuddhistBiohacker.com. So my new work with genetics, which I'm so excited about, the point of conception work is near and dear to my heart. It's 6 months working with me. You'll get a full genome analysis of your own genome. And you're going to receive a document with channeled information about your lineage and the inner work that wants to be done and the gifts that want to be seen from your lineage that relate to your genome. And then we actually build a biotransformation strategy together, your nutrition plan, all through the lens of Ayurveda, and also, you know, the spiritual piece as well, and also your inner work. So it's kind of like this whole plan to really transform your life and to understand your genetics. So that is up on my website. So again, if you go to BuddhistBiohacker.com, go to coaching, all my packages are there. But I finally have all of the stuff set up for the genetic analysis. So I'm really excited. And it is through a company that uses barcodes. So it's not attached to your name. So that's something important for everyone to know, is the information's private, and we know how important that is. So there's no 23andMe's on my end.
Wow. Yay. Well, this is fantastic. I am so glad we got a chance to do this, and so thankful for each of you that have been listening and contributing, and those who are going to listen to this later and let us know what you think. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Have a great night. And we'll see